This is CBC Vancouver News.
There were multi-years of freezes followed by large increases, which was difficult for both workers and businesses.
BC plans to formally tie minimum wage hikes to the rate of inflation.
Inflation is really uncertain in any given month, really, it seems.
Why some business groups are concerned. Plus, police look for a driver after they say a 90-year-old woman was struck and killed in a hit and run near Nanaimo.
And this can help people really heal from this deep trauma.
A CBC News exclusive. We go inside the training for healthcare workers on how to offer psychotherapy using the drug known as ecstasy. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. The BC government says it is time to make minimum wage increases automatic if inflation rises. The Labour Minister says the province plans to formally tie them to the rate of inflation, not leave it to the whims of a cabinet. Mira Baines has more on the plan and concerns about wage stability.
BC's minimum wage will increase automatically once a new bill passes this spring. The province's Labour Minister says in the past, minimum wage increases have been dependent on the government of the day.
Therefore, there were multi-years of freezes followed by large increases, which was difficult for both workers and businesses.
From 2001 to 2010, BC's minimum wage was frozen at $8 an hour. After several increases over the years, it will now go up to $17.40 per hour in June. The province estimates the hike will affect 130,000 people. About 62% of them are women, as well as younger workers in the service industry. The 3.9% increase is consistent with BC's average rate of inflation for last year. Future increases will be entrenched in a bill that Baines says will establish certainty.
Today, we introduce amendments to the Employment Standard Act to tie minimum wage increases to the rate of inflation this year and every year.
However, the Surrey Board of Trade disagrees.
Inflation is really uncertain in any given month, really, it seems. And so the announcement today by the BC government actually increases uncertainty for businesses in the face of really a perfect storm.
Huberman says businesses need a tax review to cut red tape and help companies survive. The official opposition, BC United, suggests the province needs to cut certain taxes to help with the cost of living.
People are struggling under 32 new and increased taxes, punishing fuel taxes and carbon taxes, and that lands squarely on the shoulders of this Premier and this government.
The government says with the hike, BC's minimum wage will be the third highest in the country. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
The BC Conservative Party is pledging to improve the quality of education in Surrey if it is elected. Leader John Rustad claims Surrey has been treated like a second-class citizen when it comes to education funding, citing its increasing reliance on portables and current plans to put students on shifts to avoid overcrowding.
By moving them into the schools, into the classrooms, it will eliminate this portable experience. There are kids in Surrey today that go through their entire educational process through the years, and sometimes will never actually be in a school. They'll be in portables the whole way through. And that is just wrong.
Rustad says if a Conservative government is elected, he would increase class sizes but maintain the student-to-teacher ratio. Police on Vancouver Island are asking for your help to find a driver after they say a 90-year-old woman was struck and killed in a hit-and-run near Nanaimo on Saturday. As Claire Palmer explains, it's left a tight-knit community reeling.
It was here on Cedar Road where emergency crews responded to the report of an unconscious woman on Saturday. A passing motorist discovered the elderly woman on the side of the road. Bystanders administered emergency CPR, but she was later declared deceased at the scene.
At this point, we need the public to help us. We need to see if there's anybody whose vehicle was recently damaged. Maybe somebody who has dash cam video of the area driving by to please check that. We've done our job. We need to move the investigation forward.
RCMP says evidence suggests that a vehicle hit the woman earlier Saturday, but did not remain on scene. The initial investigation took approximately 5 hours, collecting forensic evidence. Police are now asking the public for help to move the investigation forward.
We know what role we have to play, and we have to do a thorough, professional investigation. But at this point, we need the public to help us.
Meanwhile, the small village of Cedar is grappling with the death.
Well, the community is devastated. It's a very small, tight-knit community. When you have something like that, it impacts on a lot of people.
Information regarding the incident should be brought forward to the Nanaimo detachment by calling the non-emergency line. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
Police say a second person has now died after a crash on Highway 1 in Burnaby last weekend. It happened near the Sprott Street off-ramp and involved 4 young women who were on their way home in an Uber. It pulled over and stopped at the side of the highway where it was struck by an eastbound SUV. One woman died at the scene while the other passengers were taken to hospital. Police say right now impairment is not believed to be a factor. Richmond's mayor has announced his city will not be seeing a supervised consumption site. Nearly 2 weeks ago, City Council voted to approve a motion asking health authorities to look at the possibility of one at the city's hospital.
The resolution did not state that the city would establish a site. Council has no legal ability to do that. Only Vancouver Coastal Health can do this with the approval of Health Canada. Vancouver Coastal Health has now publicly stated it will not open a supervised consumption site in Richmond. That means the discussion on whether there will be a supervised consumption site in Richmond is closed. There will be no site and no further discussion by Council on this matter.
The motion drew 2 nights of heated protests at City Hall by some people criticizing what they claimed was a lack of public consultation. Mayor Brody says 26 people were killed by toxic drugs in Richmond last year, and Council will continue to look for ways to keep people safe. The BC Court of Appeal has now upheld a decision that saw an accused killer walk free because police ignored the laws of search and seizure. The province's top court found no fault with a BC Supreme Court decision excluding key evidence in the trial of Samandeep Singh Gill. Manbir Singh Kajla was shot dead in 2011 in what appeared to be a road rage incident. Police seized a phone from the suspect, which allegedly had a pocket dial recording of the shooting. Investigators failed to seek the court's permission to hang on to the evidence as required by law. The appeal court says it was a tough decision, but the correct one to make to uphold confidence in the justice system. A month after introducing legislation aimed at combating online harm, BC's Attorney General says 3 orders have now been issued and more than 20 applications seen under the Intimate Images Protection Act.
It's a very trauma-informed process, victim-driven process. So, of course, we respect the confidentiality of all the people involved in the process, and especially since it's related to intimate images. So I'm not going to give it details of those, just to people know that there are results coming through this process, and that people should know that it's available to them.
The process also includes new victim services resources, a team of 5 people dedicated to handling the complaints. Sharma says she's hoping word of the program's success will encourage other victims to come forward. Low-budget airline Lynx Air is now grounded. Over the weekend, its very last flight flew from Vancouver to Calgary. Here's the moment a crew member gave an emotional sign-off as they touched down for the final time.
With a very heavy heart, I say this is our crew's last operating flight as Lynx Air cabin crew members. We will forever be grateful for the opportunity to grow and learn so much about aviation. It has always been truly a dream come true. We are proud of the time with Lynx and 100 of unforgettable memories. On behalf of your cabin crew, this is Sean signing off for the last time.
Customers who still have bookings with Lynx are asked to contact their credit card company to secure refunds. Lynx blames rising operational costs, high fuel prices, and increased airport charges for its shutdown, among other factors. A beloved elk named Bob from a small Vancouver Island community is believed to have been killed after a crash with a car. A resident of Yubo spoke with All Points West host Jason D'Souza about their town's furry celebrity.
Bob the elk was a common sight, a friendly face that showed up in yards around town. Reports came in that an elk was struck and killed by a vehicle.
I didn't really believe it at first. I kind of thought, no, it must have been somebody else.
I want to say that, no, it's not him, but the way the police officer described his antlers and everything.
It's kind of heartbreaking because he was a bit of an icon, and he was a pillar in the community in a way.
I keep on looking out my window waiting for Bob to stare at me, but
he would cruise through town. He would acknowledge you and just keep walking. He was very curious.
We spoke with you a few months back now about some of the concerns you and other residents in Yugo have when it comes to the highway that runs through and some of the speeds cars are going. How much of a problem has it become in recent times?
I would say it's becoming more of a problem. There's a lot of people from out of town, perhaps, that either aren't aware of, the reason why we're slowing down. I think speed is, of course, the last thing on a lot of people's minds. And that's ultimately what likely led to Bob's demise.
What will you miss most about Bob the elk?
Oh, his smell. Similar to a horse, but a little bit different. His smell is something that is very near and dear to my heart.
We need to see people and really hear what they're telling us.
Coming up, healthcare professionals learn how to offer psychotherapy using MDMA, how experts say ecstasy can change lives. That story's next. Hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. Thanks for being here. The Kimberly Curling Club in BC's East Kootenay turned 100 years young this weekend. It celebrated its centennial with a bonspiel, naturally. Before that, though, our Corey Bullock headed to the local museum to learn more.
At the museum in Kimberly, Sam Callis reflects on his mother, Ada Callis, and her many achievements.
I'm kind of proud.
Ada was one of 4 women who put Kimberly on the curling map. She played third on the Ina rink, having represented BC many times with the team.
She was extraordinary. She not only was a curler, but she was dedicated to the curling rink itself.
The Ina rink won the national championships in 1962 and 1964, making it into the Canadian Curling Hall of Fame. But curling in Kimberly got its start in the 1920s.
There was about 3,500 people living here in about 1926. Winter's long, there's no television, so people got out and participated, in all kinds of sports and activities, curling being one.
The club has moved locations many times over the years, and in 1964, the city built the building that the club calls home today.
I think a lot of people are reminiscing just, about spending time there and just the people they knew, maybe they've passed on, but, people they knew that were in curling and, just that it was fun thing to do.
Past President John McGilvery says the centennial is a huge accomplishment.
I think it's fantastic that we've managed to survive 100 years. We're hoping that curling will continue to be an active sport here in Kimberly.
Today, the club hosts around 135 members, and this weekend, they celebrated.
I think people are pretty excited. They're all happy to be sharing in the celebrations, and it's just a fun sport, so people are having a fun Saturday, enjoying the day.
Sims is hopeful the club will be able to continue throwing stones for another 100 years. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Kimberly.
Earlier this month, almost 24 healthcare professionals learned how to offer psychotherapy using MDMA, the party drug known as ecstasy. CBC News got exclusive access to that training. As Yasmin Khanea shows us, experts say the drug can change lives, but there's still we don't know about it.
This isn't your typical health conference. Here, physicians, nurse practitioners, and psychiatrists from across Canada are learning how to provide MDMA-assisted psychotherapy.
What I'm going to do is go over this PowerPoint presentation.
MDMA is a synthetic stimulant and hallucinogen, more commonly known as ecstasy or Molly. In Canada, it's regulated and is illegal to use unless authorized for medical or scientific purposes, and has been gaining popularity as a form of therapy. For 6 days in February, medical practitioners discussed the drug and its effects on the nervous system. They want to use MDMA to treat patients. To prescribe it, they must request permission from Health Canada.
I did the training for my patients. Each day that I'm in clinic, I hear from people what role trauma and PTSD play in their symptoms.
Dr. Laura McLean is a physician who specializes in sleep disorders. She says trauma, for many of her patients, is the underlying cause.
People blame themselves when they can't get better. And unfortunately, other people blame them when they can't get better as well. We have this term in medicine of patients being non-compliant. And I think it's a really disrespectful term, because everybody's doing the best they can with what they've got, and we need to see people and really hear what they're telling us.
Practitioners like her are learning about the patient's experience taking MDMA. 20 people are in this round of training. It's put on by Theracell, a BC coalition of health practitioners who want to expand legal access to prescribed drugs like MDMA and psilocybin. It says another 200 medical professionals are on the wait list for future sessions. Since 2022, licensed physicians and other healthcare practitioners have been allowed to request access to MDMA and other restricted drugs through Health Canada's Special Access Program. Once a practitioner is approved, a Health Canada licensed manufacturer will mail them the drug. Health Canada has approved 41 MDMA requests since 2022. Ingrid Pacey is a Vancouver psychiatrist with more than 40 years of experience helping trauma survivors. She leads Theracell training sessions.
The role of the therapist is a bit different, because the person may have a very interior journey and, have feelings and work through a lot of those issues internally, or they may engage the therapist. So there's actual psychotherapy that happens while the person is more open, less defensive, less afraid, because they've taken MDMA.
She says MDMA can be a useful tool combined with therapy.
People go back to being young, to times of trauma, or in later years, times of some sort of trauma. And it's important to have somebody right there to comfort them, hold their hand, really support them in whatever they're going on.
She has administered MDMA through a Health Canada approved clinical trial and says a typical MDMA session lasts 4 to 6 hours. She recommends patients do 3 sessions spaced out over months. Her patients are given a dose and lay down on a bed, wear eye shades, and listen to music. Pacey teaches medical professionals how to provide talk therapy throughout the experience. In Canada, there are currently 2 ongoing MDMA clinical trials approved by Health Canada to uncover the benefits and health impacts.
However, it's definitely very encouraging. I mean, if you look at the results of the studies, the rates of improvement were substantially larger than with what we have traditionally at our disposal. And that includes antidepressant medicines and usual talk therapies like cognitive behavior therapy.
The drug can cause side effects, including high blood pressure, nausea, and panic attacks, and is not currently accepted for medical use in the U.S. But the U.S. Food and Drug Administration is reviewing an application to approve MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD. That decision could come down later this year. Health Canada says it's monitoring that U.S. review with interest. This UBC drug policy professor says practitioners here need to be prepared in case access expands.
And it's really, really important that they do it within the context of skilled therapeutic practice. And MDMA therapy is completely different from regular therapy, and we need as many therapist trained as possible so when the door opens, we can provide this service widely.
But with the excitement around MDMA comes caution. The trial groups have been small and generally white. This doctor says there is still a lot we don't know.
Oftentimes, people with other psychiatric illnesses or addictions or substance use disorders were not included in these studies. Those that were actively suicidal were not included in these studies. So we don't know if MDMA therapy is necessarily going to help all patients with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Hussein is also calling for a standardized approach to training therapists who will be working with people under the influence of drugs who can be vulnerable. In 2019, 2 BC therapists were reprimanded for their treatment of a PTSD patient during a clinical trial for MDMA-supported therapy. The research organization determined the pair had deviated from acceptable practices, which it labeled as unethical. Hussein says these cases are wrong and also rare.
We want to make sure that we have some oversight into the standards that therapists are adhering to and the training requirements that they meet. At this point, there is no governing body to oversee psychedelic therapies, including MDMA therapy.
From her practice in Maple Bay, Dr. McLean recognizes MDMA-assisted therapy is not for everyone, but wants to support the patients who seek it out.
It can help them re-look at the memories and change the story, see it from a different perspective. And this can help people really heal from this deep trauma that's been holding them hostage for their lives.
She has patients, she says, who are already interested. Yasmin Raneya, CBC News, Vancouver.
There's a live shot of a red and yellow science world. Brace yourselves for a bit more winter. Darius Madavi will have your BC-wide forecast right after this.
Northern Alberta had a dry winter, and though the region's firefighters are hoping for the best, they're preparing for the worst as this year's wildfire season begins.
We've been preparing from last year. We've continued with our training. We've been actually very proactive as far as wildfire responses with the County of Grande Prairie.
Alberta is experiencing an El Niño effect, which is expected to last until June. El Niño usually brings higher temperatures, and it's hard to predict how much rainfall there will be in the spring.
A lot of areas that traditionally would still have snow on the ground right now, like is the case in the Peace region in northwestern Alberta, is starting to see the grass already exposed. So that increases fire danger and the hazard for wildfires.
In the county of Grande Prairie, residents must now apply for a fire permit when using outdoor fires to burn fallen branches and yard debris. High Level, Peace River, Whitecourt and Lac La Biche forest areas also have such fire advisories. And in Birch Hills County and Municipal District of Fairview, restrictions are even more stringent. In the county of Grande Prairie, wildfires are already igniting. On Friday, firefighters were called to extinguish a brush fire in the Wembley area, which was started by a recreational fire pit.
We're going to be prepared for actioning any fires that we have that are going to be either, grass or wildland fires.
We've got to make sure that we have enough responders to be able to man all the trucks that we have here, and then also to keep us all safe out there. And then everything behind the scenes also is really important when it comes to food and hydration and making sure that people are getting rest.
The county is also adding new firefighters. Applications for full-time and part-time positions are open now.
People here are amazing. We do this because it's something we love to do. We come to work and we thrive in these environments.
Dennis Cofton, CBC News, Grande Prairie.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On March 12th, join CBC Vancouver's Michelle Elliott at the YWCA City Shifts free event, Reimagining Our Cities, Advancing Equity in a Polarized Time. For more information, visit ywcavan.org. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver Inbox and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Time for our BC-wide weather forecast with science and climate specialist Darius Madavi. Winter certainly not done yet.
No, not quite. I'd say one last Arctic blast. That's going to bring our temperature down tonight. And then as those outflow winds from the interior meet the moisture coming in from this low off the Gulf of, coming in from the Gulf of Alaska, means a bit of snow likely for Vancouver tomorrow. Now, not going to be too much, unlike on parts of the central and northern coasts where inland sections can expect around 10 to 25 centimeters by Wednesday morning. We do have a special weather statement in place for the lower mainland because of that wintry mix of snow transitioning to rain, maybe some freezing rain in the valley. That's expected tomorrow night into Wednesday, and then some winter storm warnings for the mountain passes, which we need to be aware of in case we are going to do any traveling, because those freezing levels have come down, and so there is a risk of icing as well as the snow that is on its way across the province. So as you can see, plenty of snowfall coming no matter where you are in BC, with the big exception of the northeast, which is not great news, especially for the drought conditions there, as well as some parts of the south coast, which, aside from higher elevations, as usual, aren't going to get quite as much snow as the interior. Now, in terms of the south coast, the highest elevations, like around Whistler, could get significant amounts. This is one of the more conservative models in terms of places like Whistler, so they could get quite a bit more than that in terms of a big dump. But for the lower mainland, not looking like too much, although the timing here does matter, because if this comes a little bit earlier in the day, it could affect our commute, evening commute tomorrow. But if it comes a little bit later, in terms of the after the evening commute, then we could see the rain overnight as it warms up really wash away that snow, not becoming too much of a problem Wednesday morning. So it really depends on how the timing shakes out here. So fingers crossed it comes a little bit later than some of the models are saying. Now, as this big front does move in, you can see some snow coming throughout the island and then making its way here to Vancouver as well. Now, in terms of conditions, tomorrow we are going to see plenty of activity across the province, with most of it confined to the higher elevations, but be aware that as those temperatures do come down, once again, be careful when you're traveling, and be aware that no matter where you are, there is quite a bit of snow possible. Here in Vancouver, not quite a bit of snow, but any amount is a lot for us, so be careful if you're going to be commuting tomorrow and you're on the roads, because the snow might come around 4 or 5 p.m., the earliest models are saying. Now, we have that wet rain and snow tomorrow, continuing into the evening, and then Wednesday we see that transition to rain, and that continues for a very typical February Vancouver forecast.
Okay, Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
And that is your late news for this Monday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news at any hour, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Have a good night.